Hello and welcome to today's session on Spec Steppin, where we are going to look at the Credential Management API. So what this API does is anytime you're working with login, username, password type of functionality, you can interact with storing it in the browser. Some of you have probably dealt with this already in as a user, where it asks when you're in a browser, hey, do you want to store this password in your password manager? And this API allows us to interact with that password manager. So I've got a basic demo to show you. Now, I will say this. In dealing with this credential management API, there are some hiccups and some things that make it a little quirky as far as using it. For example, I've found that it works best in Chrome. I personally use Brave, which is built on Chrome, or Arc, which is built on Chrome, and I use Firefox and Safari and all that to test different things. But my main browser is Brave. And I found that this is the code here does not actually work as easy in different environments based on how the user has things set up. For example, in Brave, I was having difficulties with the retrieval of the password, and it wasn't even failing in my try catch. It was like it was just hanging out there. And in some of my research, I found that sometimes that can happen if you're using like a password management plugin extension, which I do. I use LastPass as my password manager, and so I was having some issues with that. Then I thought, okay, well, I'll try Firefox. So I went to Firefox and I tried that, knowing it's different than a Chromium. It's a Mozilla based. And I tried to do that, and the retrieval was not working. And that type of retrieval I was doing was not supported. And there are some things in here that are, as you can see from the icon here, that are still experimental. So the best way I could get this to work without making the code more complex than it needs to be is doing it within Chrome, which my Chrome version has really no plugins. I just use it for display purposes and things like that. So it's so even though this is not experimental, I still would be a little leery about using it unless you're ready to write some extensive code to check for, um, you know, plugins and things like that, or report proper errors to end users and things. Now, what does work really well is the setting of the password in the browser's password manager. What doesn't work is the retrieval as easily. It doesn't work. I say it works, but it doesn't work as easily, like I mentioned before, with some other hiccups. Now, within the browser itself, it actually will retrieve and put it in the username and password for you, which works nicely, and maybe that's sufficient. But if you're wanting to do anything else with it, as far as retrieving the username and password and doing something with it, that's where it gets a little trickier. And so just keep that in mind if you're going to use this API, and I would definitely make sure you read through the documentation. So here's how it works. So I put in just a username and password. And you can get into managed passwords to see these. So if you're testing, you can go in there and delete them and all that stuff. So I put them in there and I logged in. And when I come back, it's going to add in that password back there. But I can also auto log in with stored credentials. So what I could do instead of having this feature here, or I could just do it if I see them. Like, for example, my LastPass, I have set up on some sites where auto logs in for me. I don't, if I go to login screen, I don't have to do anything. It does it for me and submits it. So we can do some similar functionality with this API. Now, I don't have it. This is just a demo. I don't have it actually logging in anywhere, but basically you would retrieve the credentials, put it in the proper form objects, and submit the form programmatically. So credential management API is supported. If I just click log in, it'll say, hey, do you want to sign in as, now this is coming from the browser, sign in as John. If I say yes, okay, auto filled in and everything to sign in. So, but you could auto log in. So let's jump to the code. So the HTML is just basic. just a basic form, nothing really fancy for this. So, and then I have the login button, which is going to store the credentials, and then I have the auto login. Styles are nothing fancy, just to make it look a little prettier for the demo. They're not necessary for the functionality. So then I wrapped everything in a DOM content loaded just because I wanted to make sure everything was loaded up and the APIs and all that stuff. Then I'm just testing to see if I'm in a browser where I can access the proper tools in the credential management APIs. So I'm testing for Navigator and Password Credential. As you saw, it said that it was supported in the browser, so that check went through well. Then I'm grabbing my form and I'm listening for the submit, preventing it from going to a server. And then I'm just grabbing the different pieces of that form, username, password, all that stuff. If they exist, then I am setting a new password credential, passing the form in, and then that credential, those credentials of username and password, I'm passing on to the credentials object, which is part of the credentials management API, and calling the store method, which will store those credentials in the password manager. So then I'm just logging it, credentials stored. And then I just reset the form to clear it out. And then I have a try catch if it fails. So I'm going to actually go into my password management and I'm going to just get rid of this one. And let me just refresh the screen. Okay, API is supported. So I do John and just a simple password. I'm not doing any validation here, which I would normally recommend, just different combinations of characters and minimums and all that stuff. That's not the point of this one. So I click login. And do you want to save it? This is from the browser. This is part of the credential manager. Do you want to save the password? You probably have seen this all the time. This is part of it. So I click save. It's saved to the device. I'm not signed in here to Chrome, so it's not everywhere. That's what that message was telling me. And there, credentials stored. Try the auto login button. So the credentials were stored right here. That's where that message is. Now, the login button, what I do is I grab that auto login button and I have a Boolean that I'm just checking. If you click and the request is not returned and you try to click again, it will um, say, hey, a request is pending, or it won't do anything. That's one of the things I think could be improved in this API is some of the feedback uh, tools to give feedback to the end user and in our flow of our code, but it's not there yet. So I'm click it, if it's false, this will pass over. I'll set it to true. I'll disable the auto login button so they don't click again. Now, one of the things I'm not doing is I'm not changing the button or the cursor to show that it's disabled. I just didn't take the time to do that, but I would normally do that in a production app. So I would disable the button and change the look and feel so that the end user knows it's disabled. This is where the actual magic occurs, where it does this get call to get the password. This mediation, there's a bunch of things in the mediation. Let me just go here. I think it's under. Where's mediation? I thought it was under the credential. Let me look under here. Um, I thought I read through that mediation stuff here on the screen. I thought I read through it in credentials container, but maybe I was wrong. In here somewhere, it talks about whether things are required or not in a different. Let me just do it here. Nope. Here, one last shot here. And it doesn't show somewhere in here. I know I found it before. It showed what the mediation different options are, but I'm not. seeing it in here right now. It is in here somewhere, what these different options are for mediation. So let me actually do this. Where is it at? Um, Apologies on that, but it is in there somewhere. I did come across it. I just can't remember where I found that. Um, where the mediation stuff is. Maybe it's under the Git. Oh, here it is. Yep. Sorry. So it is under the Git, the parameters. So under mediation, here's the different items. So basically, whether they'll be required to log in every time they visit. So I'm having it as optional right now, just to put something there. It is optional for these parameters, but if you're going to require login, if you want them to log in automatically, if we get the credentials, things like that, that's what that's for. So then, so it's going to grab them, and if they exist, I'm setting the values here. Now, again, I could log in automatically if they exist and just grab the form and do the submission programmatically if I wanted to. But I wanted to show you how this will fill out on the screen. So I'm just going to click auto login, sign in as John, click sign in, and it fills it in right there. Auto filled credentials for user John. So that's where this line comes from. And if I had any errors or anything, it would have shown up. And now my request pending is false, auto login disabled is false. So I can log in again if I wish to. So anyway, that's basically a very, very quick, brief overview of some of the capabilities. You can get much deeper, as with anything when you're dealing with credentials and logging in and security. Yeah, you can be Alice going down the hole pretty rapidly, and some of that is necessary for protection and security. But I just wanted to show you this quick overview how you can get in and access the credentials and do things with the credentials of your app within the browser. So again, play with it. If you have any questions, let me know. And if not, happy stepping.